The Neutron's End wasn't the kind of establishment you'd find in any respectable travel guide. Located in the armpit of the Kepler station's industrial sector, it catered to the sort of clientele who preferred their conversations lubricated with cheap synthol and their personal histories unexamined. The lighting was dim enough to hide scars, the music loud enough to drown out secrets, and the bartender human enough to not ask questions. Marcus wiped down another glass with practiced indifference, watching the weekly ritual unfold at the corner booth. Every galactic standard Tuesday, like clockwork, the same collection of hardened spacers gathered to compare whose homeworld had tried hardest to kill them. It was like watching a nature documentary, if nature documentaries featured grown adults measuring their trauma responses. So there I was, Crocs was saying, his reptilian hide rippling with old scars that caught the neon light, hanging upside down from a glorsch tree, nothing but my ceremonial blade, and 3 hours of oxygen left in my breather. The Saurian warrior took a long pull from his drink, savoring both the alcohol and the attention. That's when I heard it. The clicking. Vela's compound eyes swiveled toward him with practiced skepticism. The arthropod hunter had heard this story before, but protocol demanded she let him finish before launching into her own tale of survival horror. Her chitinous exoskeleton bore its own collection of battle scars, each one a story she was eager to share. The clicking means tunnel crawlers, Crocs continued, warming to his theme. Six-legged nightmares with mandibles that can snap through titanium plating. Most folks who hear that sound don't live long enough to describe it. He gestured dramatically with one clawed hand. But I'm not most folks. Marcus rolled his eyes and reached for another glass. He'd been tending bar in this sector for 3 years now, and the stories never got more original, just louder. The other patrons were already leaning in, anticipating the moment when Crocs would describe his daring escape in excruciating detail, followed immediately by Vela's inevitable attempt to top it with something involving acid-spitting deathworms. Of course, Vela interjected right on cue, tunnel crawlers are practically house pets compared to the boring beetles of Kepler 438b. Her mandibles clicked in what Marcus had learned to recognize as smugness. At least your monsters have the courtesy to make noise before they try to digest you alive. The game was afoot. Marcus suppressed a sigh and settled in for another round of Whose Planet Sucks Most, wondering not for the first time why he'd ever left Earth's nice boring gravity well. Crocs's story had barely reached its climactic blade-through-the-eye conclusion, when Vela decided she'd had enough of playing second fiddle to a glorified lizard with commitment issues. Boring beetles, she repeated. Her voice carrying that special tone reserved for explaining obvious things to slow children, are 12 feet long, completely silent, and they hunt by detecting the electromagnetic signatures of neural activity. They literally smell your thoughts, Crocs. Your tunnel crawlers are basically noisy puppies with dental problems. Puppies? Crocs's scales bristled with indignation. I'll have you know that tunnel crawlers have wiped out entire colonies. The Meridian incident of 2387 ring any bells? 40,000 sentients, gone in 6 hours, because they were stupid enough to make noise. Vela shot back. Boring beetles took out the hive fleet Zenestra without a single distress signal getting through. One day they were there. The next day nothing but empty shells and the smell of dissolved chitin. Marcus noticed that the conversation was attracting attention from the other tables. A crystalline trader named Quartz had turned his prismatic head toward the debate, while Brack, a heavily muscled Ursoid freight hauler, had stopped mid-drink to listen. This was how it always started. Someone would mention their homeworld's apex predator. Someone else would feel compelled to one-up them. And before you knew it, half the bar was involved in a dick-measuring contest with creatures that could eat starships. Oh please. Quartz chimed in, his voice resonating like wind chimes in a tornado. You carbon-based lifeforms are so dramatic about your little flesh-eating problems. Try growing up on a world where the very rocks want to kill you. Silicon sharks that swim through solid granite, hunting by seismic vibration. I once watched one breach through a mountain to catch a survey shuttle. Brack let out a sound that was either laughter or a territorial challenge. Rocks? You're worried about rocks. Where I come from, the weather has teeth. Storm wraiths that ride the lightning, made of pure electromagnetic fury. They don't just kill you, they erase you from the quantum level up. My grandfather got caught in one during his vision quest. We're still not sure if he ever existed. Marcus poured himself a shot of actual Earth whiskey, the real stuff he kept hidden behind the synthetic swill. This was going to be a long night. Storm wraiths are at least quick about it. Vela said dismissively. Boring beetles dissolve you slowly, keeping you conscious so they can feed on your terror response. The biochemical process takes approximately 72 hours. Amateurs, growled a voice from the back of the bar. Everyone turned to see Thane, a scarred veteran, whose species Marcus had never been able to identify and had learned not to ask about. You're all talking about things that hunt individual prey. On Mortis Prime, the entire ecosystem is one big predator. The trees, the grass, the air itself. Even the dirt tries to eat you. Survival isn't about fighting one monster, it's about convincing an entire planet that you're not worth the caloric expenditure. The bar fell silent for a moment, as everyone processed this. Then Croc snorted. Right, and I suppose you're the only one tough enough to survive this mythical death planet. Thane's smile revealed too many teeth arranged in ways that violated several biological principles. I didn't say I survived it, lizard boy. I said I convinced it I wasn't worth eating. There's a difference. Marcus refilled his glass and wondered why humans were considered the weird ones in this galaxy. The testosterone-fueled pissing contest was reaching its peak when Marcus finally decided he'd heard enough. He set down his glass with the kind of deliberate clink that somehow managed to cut through the ambient noise of boasting and one-upmanship. You know, he said in the same tone he might use to comment on the weather, this is all very impressive. Really, the way you've all managed to survive these terrifying apex predators that rule your homeworlds. Very heroic stuff. The aliens turned toward him with the kind of surprised attention usually reserved for furniture that had suddenly started talking. Marcus wasn't known for participating in their weekly trauma bonding sessions. But here's the thing that's been bugging me, Marcus continued, polishing another glass with maddening casualness. You keep talking about surviving these creatures. Like that's the impressive part. Croc's tail twitched with irritation. And what exactly would you know about surviving Deathworld predators, human? Earth is classified as a garden world, probably the most boring rock in the galaxy. Oh, Earth definitely has its share of predators, Marcus said, his voice carrying just a hint of something that made Vela's antenna twitch nervously. Had I should say, past tense, had. Quartz's crystalline structure flickered with curiosity. What happened to them? Climate change? Asteroid impact? Plague? Marcus smiled. And for some reason that smile made Thane's too many teeth look positively friendly by comparison. We domesticated them. The silence that followed was the kind you usually only get in vacuum. Complete, absolute, and slightly terrifying. Then Brack started laughing. It was a deep rumbling sound that shook the glassware behind the bar. Domesticated? You mean like turned them into pets? Something like that, Marcus said, still wearing that unsettling smile. Take wolves for instance. Apex pack hunters, perfectly evolved killing machines. Humans looked at them and thought, you know what, those would make great companions. So we befriended them. Selective breeding. A few thousand years of evolution, and now they fetch our slippers and sleep on our beds. Wolves aren't exactly Deathworld predators, Vela pointed out, though her mandibles were clicking in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as nervous energy. Fair point, Marcus acknowledged. How about bears? 8-foot-tall omnivores with claws that can rip through steel and enough raw strength to flip a ground vehicle. We taught them to ride bicycles and perform in circuses. For treats. The laughter was becoming noticeably more forced. Or cats, Marcus continued conversationally. Solitary hunters with reflexes faster than most species' neural processing speed. We convinced them to live in our houses and purr when we pet them. Granted, they still occasionally bring us dead things as presents, but we consider that charming. Okay, but those are small predators, Croc said, though his scales were starting to shift color in what Marcus had learned was a stress response. Nothing like the real monsters we're talking about. Marcus's smile widened just a fraction. You're right, those were just the warm-up. Want to hear about the big ones? The bar had gone completely quiet except for the low hum of the air recyclers, and the sound of several alien species realizing they might have fundamentally misunderstood something very important about humans. Marcus reached behind the bar and pulled out his personal communication device, a sleek piece of Earth tech that looked deceptively simple compared to the baroque complexity of most alien electronics. You know what? Don't take my word for it. Let me show you. He tapped the screen a few times, and after a moment of quantum entanglement doing its thing across several light-years, a holographic projection flickered to life above the bar. The image resolved into a sunny backyard scene that looked almost aggressively normal: green grass, blue sky, white picket fence, the kind of suburban paradise that made most aliens break out in hives just thinking about the monotony. Hey Marcus, the woman who appeared in the projection was clearly his sister, sharing the same dark hair and unsettling smile. She was wearing what appeared to be exercise clothing and holding a leash. Perfect timing, I was just about to take the kids for their walk. Kids? Vela whispered, her compound eyes focusing on something moving in the background of the projection. Jenny, I've got some friends here from off-world, Marcus said with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. Mind if they tag along for walkies? They were just telling me about the scary predators on their homeworlds. Oh how fun, Jenny's smile was bright and cheerful and made every alien in the bar want to find the nearest exit. Come on then, let's go see who wants to play today. The projection followed Jenny as she walked toward what appeared to be a large enclosure. The first creature that bounded into view made Crocs actually fall off his stool. This is Duchess, Jenny said fondly, scratching behind the ears of what could only be described as a living nightmare with a wagging tail. The creature stood 4 feet at the shoulder, had teeth that belonged on a mining drill, and eyes that tracked movement with the cold calculation of a natural-born killer. She's a German Shepherd Timberwolf hybrid. Aren't you a good girl? Yes you are. Duchess responded by making a sound that was part bark, part howl and part war cry. Her tail wagged hard enough to knock over a small tree. That, Thane's voice cracked slightly. That's a dire wolf. You have a dire wolf as a pet. Oh, Duchess isn't the pet. Jenny laughed, clipping a leash to what the aliens were now realizing was essentially a 4-legged death machine. She's the babysitter. The real pets are back here. The projection panned to reveal what could only be charitably described as a menagerie of monsters. A massive feline that rippled with muscle and bore stripes like war paint lounged in a patch of sunlight, occasionally opening one yellow eye to track the movements of smaller creatures that any sane species would classify as emergency evacuation scenarios. That's Tigger, Jenny said with the same tone most people use to discuss houseplants. He's a rescue. Some idiot bought him as a cub and then realized they couldn't handle him when he hit 200 pounds. As if big cats were just oversized house cats or something. Brack made a sound like air leaking from a punctured hull. 200 pounds of predator muscle and you named it Tigger. He bounces, Jenny explained reasonably. You should see him with his favorite ball. Oh, and that's Nemo over there. The aliens followed her gesture to what appeared to be a large pool, where something approximately the size of a small shuttle was gliding through the water with the fluid grace of a living torpedo. Rows of teeth were briefly visible as it surfaced, along with dead black eyes that had been perfected by millions of years of evolution to be absolutely terrifying. Great white shark, Marcus explained helpfully. Jenny's got her marine biology certification. Nemo there is actually pretty small for his species, only about 15 feet long. Only 15 feet, Quartz repeated faintly, his crystalline structure flickering through several colors that probably indicated deep psychological distress. Oh, but wait until you meet my favorite, Jenny said, leading the group toward what appeared to be a much larger enclosure. She's been such a good girl lately. Haven't you, precious? The thing that emerged from the shadows made every single alien in the bar take an involuntary step backward, despite the fact that they were looking at a hologram from several star systems away. It moved with the fluid, predatory grace of something that had never, in its entire evolutionary history, been anything other than an apex predator. Scales that looked like living armor caught the sunlight, and when it opened its mouth, the aliens could see teeth that belonged in a weapons catalog. Saltwater crocodile, Marcus said conversationally. Precious there is about 20 feet long and weighs in at just over 2,000 pounds. Been around since the dinosaurs, pretty much unchanged because evolution looked at them and said, yeah that's perfect, don't touch anything. Jenny was scratching the massive reptile under what might generously be called its chin, and the creature was making a sound that was disturbingly close to purring. She loves belly rubs, but you have to be careful about the timing. Crocodiles can be a bit moody after feeding time. Feeding time, Crocs's voice had gone up about 3 octaves. Oh, just some fish, and the occasional whole chicken, Jenny said dismissively. Nothing too exotic, although she does love it when I throw in a watermelon. The way she crushes it is just adorable. In the background of the projection, Duchess was playing fetch with what appeared to be a log. Tigger was stalking something off camera with the focused intensity of a guided missile, and Nemo had surfaced again, possibly to see what all the excitement was about. Well, I should let you get back to your friends, Jenny said, waving at the holographic pickup. Say hi to everyone for me. Oh, and Marcus, Mom called. She wants to know if you're coming to dinner on Sunday. She's making that roast you like, and Dad just got back from his camping trip with the bears. Camping trip with the bears? Vela asked weakly. Dad's a wildlife photographer, Marcus explained as the projection faded. Specializes in dangerous animals, says they're more predictable than people. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the sound of Brack quietly ordering another drink. A very large drink. Marcus poured Brack's drink with the same casual efficiency he'd shown throughout the evening, as if he hadn't just shattered every assumption his patrons had about the galactic hierarchy of badassery. He let the silence stretch for a moment, savoring the expressions of existential dread painted across various alien features. The thing is, he said finally, setting the bottle down with a soft clink, those were just the land predators, and the easy ones at that. Thane, who had been unnaturally quiet since Precious made her appearance, finally found his voice. Easy ones. Oh yeah. Mammals are social creatures, you see. Pack hunters, family units, that sort of thing. Once you figure out their communication patterns and establish yourself in their hierarchy, it's just a matter of patience and treats. Very straightforward. Marcus wiped down the bar with the air of someone discussing basic engineering principles. The real challenge was the ocean. The ocean, Vela repeated faintly. Biggest hunting ground on the planet. Three-dimensional battlefield, where the predators had millions of years to perfect the art of killing things. Marcus's smile took on a quality that made several patrons unconsciously edge toward the exits. Humans looked at that and thought, you know what this needs? Teamwork. He pulled up another hologram. This one showing what appeared to be a human in some kind of waterproof suit floating next to something that made Nemo look like a goldfish. The creature was easily 40 feet long, with a dorsal fin that cut through the water like a living blade, and dead black eyes that suggested it had never met a problem it couldn't solve by eating it. Great white shark, adult specimen, Marcus explained conversationally. This is Dr. Rodriguez. She's been studying shark behavior for about 15 years now. That particular shark, they call him Deep Blue. He's a regular at the research station. Research station. Crox's scales had gone completely pale. Oh, humans love studying things that can kill them. It's sort of a hobby. Dr. Rodriguez there has been in the water with Deep Blue dozens of times. He's gotten quite fond of her. Even lets her remove parasites sometimes. The hologram shifted to show the human actually touching the massive predator, running her hands along its scarred hide while it remained perfectly still. Several aliens made sounds that their translators couldn't properly convert. But sharks were just the beginning. Marcus continued, switching to another image. Once we figured out the ocean, we started getting creative. Take whales for instance. The new projection showed a creature so massive it defied comprehension. It was longer than most of the starships docked at the station, with flukes that could crush a small building and a mouth large enough to swallow a shuttlecraft whole. Blue whale, largest creature ever to exist on Earth. 100 feet long, 200 tons of pure oceanic dominance. Humans looked at this living mountain, and thought, I bet we could teach it to sing with us. Sing. Quartz's voice had taken on a quality that suggested his crystalline matrix was approaching critical resonance failure. Whale song is incredibly complex. Layered harmonic structures that can travel for thousands of miles underwater. Humans spent decades learning to communicate with them. Now we have regular conversations. They're actually quite philosophical whales. Very zen. Marcus paused to refill his own glass. Although they do have some strong opinions about krill distribution and shipping lanes. The projection changed again, this time showing something that made every alien in the bar suddenly very interested in finding the nearest emergency exit. It was sleek, black and white, with intelligence burning in its eyes and teeth that were clearly designed for one purpose only. Orcas, Marcus said with obvious fondness. Killer whales, apex predators of the ocean, with brains larger than most sentient species and social structures more complex than most galactic governments. They hunt in coordinated packs, use tools, pass knowledge down through generations, and can take down creatures 50 times their size through pure tactical brilliance. And you domesticated them too? Brack asked, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer, and was afraid of it. Domesticated is the wrong word. We formed alliances, mutual cooperation agreements. Humans help them with things like fishing and territory disputes. They help us with underwater research and the occasional rescue operation. Very professional relationship. The hologram now showed a human swimming alongside a pod of the massive predators, the creatures moving with obvious intelligence and coordination around their human companion. The really impressive part, Marcus continued, is that we didn't stop with Earth's oceans. Once we got to space, we started applying the same principles to other worlds. Take the European ice serpents, for instance. A new image appeared, showing something that lived in the space between nightmare and physics textbook. It was translucent, graceful, and obviously designed to hunt in three-dimensional space where there was nowhere to hide. 50-foot-long predators that swim through liquid methane like it's water. Humans set up research stations on Europa specifically to study them. Turns out they're incredibly intelligent, and have a complex social hierarchy based on electromagnetic field manipulation. Dr. Chen, different Chen, not the one you're thinking of, actually learned to communicate with them through modified radio equipment. You're telling us, Thane said slowly, that humans have formed relationships with space-swimming super predators. Well, the juvenile ones, mostly. The adults are still a bit standoffish, but the young ones are incredibly curious about human technology. They especially like the lights on our submarines. Vela's mandibles were clicking so rapidly they created a sound like castanets in an earthquake. What about flying predators? Surely even humans can't. Oh, aerial predators were actually our first success story. Marcus interrupted cheerfully. Birds of prey have been working with humans for thousands of years. Falconry, they called it. Humans would catch these perfectly evolved flying killing machines and train them to hunt cooperatively. The hologram showed a human with a massive bird perched on their arm, its talons easily large enough to puncture steel plating and eyes that tracked movement with mechanical precision. Golden eagle, 8-foot wingspan, talons that can exert enough pressure to crack bones, and visual acuity that makes most targeting systems look primitive. Humans taught them to hunt on command and return to their handlers for treats. But surely, Quartz said desperately, there must be some creatures even humans won't. Dragons, Marcus said simply. Every alien in the bar froze. Sorry, what now? Crocs whispered. Dragons. Well, technically they're called Komodo dragons. But the principle stands. 10-foot-long reptilian predators with bacteria-laden saliva that can kill creatures several times their size through infection alone. Humans looked at these living biological weapons and thought, let's put them in zoos, so our children can learn about them. The final hologram showed a human calmly feeding what could only be described as a land-based version of Precious, except somehow more terrifying due to its obvious intelligence and mobility. The point is, Marcus said, shutting off the projector and returning to his glass cleaning with infuriating casualness. Every world you've mentioned tonight, every apex predator you've survived, every Deathworld nightmare that's tried to kill you, humans would probably try to make friends with it. Or at least study it extensively before making friends with it. But why? Vela asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus paused in his cleaning and looked up at the assembled aliens with something that might have been pity. Because that's what humans do. We don't survive our predators. We don't hide from them, or fight them off, or barely escape with our lives. His smile was gentle, understanding, and absolutely terrifying. We make them part of the family. The exodus began slowly, with Quartz quietly settling his tab and mentioning something about an early shuttle. Then Brack remembered an urgent cargo delivery, and Vela suddenly realized she had somewhere very important to be, that wasn't anywhere near the human bartender. Within minutes, the weekly gathering of hardened survivors had dwindled to just Thane, who sat staring at his drink, with the expression of someone reconsidering every major life decision that had led him to this moment. Marcus watched the last of his regular customers hurry toward the exit with the satisfied expression of someone who had just solved a persistent problem through the elegant application of truth. The neutron's end was finally blissfully quiet except for the ambient hum of life support systems and Thane's increasingly labored breathing. You know, Marcus said conversationally, wiping down the bar one final time, I probably should have mentioned the really dangerous stuff. Thane's head snapped up so fast Marcus was genuinely concerned about spinal injury. The really dangerous stuff. Oh yeah. See all those examples I showed your friends? Those were the success stories. The creatures we've already figured out how to work with. Marcus smiled that particular smile again, the one that suggested he knew something that would fundamentally alter your understanding of the universe and was deciding whether or not to share it. But humans are nothing if not ambitious. He pulled out his communicator again, this time bringing up what appeared to be a news feed from Earth. The headline scrolled across the holographic display in cheerful matter-of-fact text that somehow made it even more terrifying. Australian research team reports progress in cephalopod communication project. Giant Pacific octopus, Marcus explained as images of something that belonged in cosmic horror literature filled the projection space. 30-foot arm span, problem-solving intelligence that puts most AIs to shame and the ability to change color, texture and shape at will. Basically a living Swiss Army knife that can think. He paused to pour himself another drink. Dr. Martinez and her team have been working with them for about 5 years now. Early results suggest they have a complex language based on chromatic patterns and that they find human technology fascinating. Thane made a sound like a deflating balloon. You're teaching shape-shifting super predators to talk. Well, learning their language technically. But yes, the principle holds. Marcus switched to another feed. Then there's the Deep Sea Research Division. They've been working with something they're calling void swimmers. Creatures that live in oceanic trenches so deep that the pressure would crush most starship hulls. Bioluminescent, highly intelligent, and apparently capable of some form of electromagnetic communication that can penetrate solid rock. The images showed creatures that seemed to exist in violation of several basic principles of biology, moving through crushing darkness with an otherworldly grace that suggested they belonged to some entirely different category of existence. The really exciting part, Marcus continued with the enthusiasm of someone discussing a particularly interesting hobby, is that they seem to have a symbiotic relationship with the thermal vents down there. Some researchers think they might actually be farming them. Underwater agriculture at crushing depths in near boiling water. Farming. Thane's voice had taken on the quality of someone asking about the weather while standing in the middle of a hurricane. Sustainable ecosystem management. Very advanced stuff. Marcus pulled up yet another feed, this one showing what appeared to be a space station orbiting something that definitely wasn't a planet. But the real breakthrough is happening out in the Oort cloud. The projection showed creatures that existed in the space between imagination and mathematical impossibility. They were vast, translucent, and moved through the vacuum of interplanetary space like jellyfish through water, trailing tendrils of what looked like captured starlight. Space whales, Marcus said with obvious pride. Largest living creatures we've ever encountered. Some of them are bigger than space stations. They feed on solar radiation and cosmic dust, migrate along gravitational currents, and appear to communicate through gravitational wave manipulation. Gravitational waves, Thane repeated numbly. Dr. Okafor's team has been trying to establish contact for 3 years now. They think the creatures might be trying to teach them something about faster-than-light travel. The mathematics are incredibly complex, but the preliminary models suggest they've figured out how to surf gravitational fields like ocean currents. Marcus switched off the projection and returned to his perpetual glass cleaning routine, leaving Thane to process the implications of humans actively courting cosmic horrors as potential teachers and research partners. The thing you have to understand about humans, Marcus said, his tone conversational and friendly and absolutely soul-crushing, is that we don't really have a concept of too dangerous to approach. We have too dangerous to approach carelessly, which is completely different. Every creature you and your friends described tonight, the tunnel crawlers, the boring beetles, the storm wraiths, even Thane's planet-sized ecosystem predator, humans would probably classify them as interesting research opportunities. He paused to refill Thane's glass without being asked, noting that the alien's hands were shaking slightly. I mean, take your Mortis Prime for instance. An entire planet that functions as a single predatory organism. That's not a survival challenge, that's a first contact scenario. Humans would probably send a diplomatic mission to establish formal relations with a sentient planet. Maybe work out some kind of cultural exchange program. Cultural exchange, Thane echoed faintly. With a planet that eats people, well, we'd probably start with something simple. Maybe music. Humans have had good luck communicating through music. Or mathematics, universal language and all that. The point is we'd figure out how to talk to it before we decided whether or not it was actually hostile. Marcus polished the same glass for the 4th time, his movements meditative and somehow ominous. See, that's the fundamental difference between humans and pretty much every other species in the galaxy. You all assume that apex predators are automatically enemies. Humans assume they're potential friends who just haven't been properly introduced yet. Thane stared at his drink for a long moment, then drained the entire glass in one go. That's the most terrifying thing I've ever heard. Really? I was going for reassuring. Marcus smiled and began cleaning another glass. Think about it this way, if humans ever show up in your system, you'll never have to worry about local predators again. We'll either make friends with them, figure out how to communicate with them, or adopt them as pets. Problem solved. That's not reassuring. That's worse. Thane stood up with the careful movements of someone whose entire worldview had just been systematically demolished and rebuilt from spare parts. Do you have any idea what this means for galactic civilization? Humans don't just survive Deathworlds, you colonize them. You don't avoid apex predators, you recruit them. You're not a species, you're a planetary conquest protocol disguised as friendly mammals. Marcus considered this assessment while adding a new glass to his cleaning rotation. I prefer to think of us as enthusiastic xenobiologists with boundary issues, but I can see how that might come across as threatening. Thane dropped some credits on the bar with hands that were definitely shaking now. I need to make some calls, update some threat assessments, possibly relocate to a different galaxy. Safe travels, Marcus called after him as Thane stumbled toward the exit with the unsteady gait of someone reconsidering the fundamental nature of existence. And hey, if you ever run into any interesting predators out there, let me know. I've got family back home who love hearing about new species. The door sealed behind Thane with a soft hiss, leaving Marcus alone in his bar for the first time in 3 years. He looked around at the empty tables, the unused chairs, the sudden and profound silence that filled the space like a comfortable blanket. Finally he muttered, reaching under the bar for his personal bottle of Earth whiskey, "Some peace and quiet." He poured himself a generous measure and settled in behind the bar with a contented sigh. Tomorrow word would spread throughout the station about the human bartender who had casually revealed that his species treated galactic apex predators like potential drinking buddies. The weekly bragging sessions would probably relocate to some other establishment, one with a nice safe alien bartender who didn't have holographic evidence of their family members playing fetch with creatures that could eat starships. Marcus raised his glass in a silent toast to an empty bar and took a long satisfying sip. Outside the station continued its eternal rotation through the void, but inside the neutron's end, everything was exactly as peaceful as a human could want it. After all, it wasn't like he'd mentioned the experimental work with black hole entities or the ongoing negotiations with that sentient supernova in the Vega system. Some things were better saved for special occasions.